And we are live. It's a great day at Cribl TV to have James Curtis with us to talk about how to build distributed security teams. Post COVID, I think this is a massive challenge. Whether you're building a team from scratch, whether you joined a team as a manager and you're building up your teams, you're building up your functions. How to get this done is just it's a big challenge. So glad today to have James Curtis with us to talk about his recommendations for building a team, the challenges, how to manage it, how to build culture, how to build relationships, and at the end of the day, improve your security. James, thank you. Can you give us a quick intro and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is James Curtis. I've the owner of Cjapi. We help out with just general guidance, how to build good security teams, assistance with tools, things like that. And then just today, we're just going to basically be talking about some of the things that we need to build out a good security team. I've built out or helped assisted building out security teams in groups that span up to 10 different countries. So definitely building distributed is an issue. A lot of different issues that go into it, but we'll talk about some of those today.
Yeah, time zones. Let's talk about how the awfulness of time zones.
Oh, all the time.
All right, it's going to have a small amount of structure. So in this talk, we're going to talk about culture, management, coordination, and then we're going to talk about some solutions around communication, task and service-based frameworks, and engagement tools like Slack and Teams. And James is going to give us some closing thoughts, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about his company. Really appreciate y'all being here. Also, we have to do it. We have to make another pitch for the Cribl reference architecture. Just something we just released. Had a number of live streams on this subject. Really enjoy it. Oprah wants to give everyone a security architecture. Use this nice QR code in order to get the link, and really, really appreciate it. All right, so let's so it's just going to be James and I. So James, tell me, what do you see as the challenge? What are the three big challenges you see building a distributed security team?
Yep. So definitely the three biggest challenges are going to be the culture of the organization that you're in. So different cultures are going to be more willing or apt to throw in and just go all in on saying we're going to be completely secure. Some companies are going to be more hesitant. So you have to work with leadership and build up that sense of culture, sort of over communication of this is how we're going to operate. We're going to operate in a secure manner. Definitely management, one-on-ones, frequent one-on-ones with employees, things like that, making sure that you're having a lot of over communication or constant communication with your employees. And then coordination. So getting people out of Italy, finding that 1 hour sliver of time that you meet with the person in Italy to actually go through the thing that you've been emailing back and forth for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, it really is something. Time zones are the devil. They just are. So let's start and break this down a little bit more in certain terms of culture. So it's not only the culture of your business, but the culture of your team. And then also that I think there's a big interplay there with the culture of where someone lives, especially with global teams. I mean, you're based in the US, but you could have people in Europe, Lithuania, they could be in Asia, India, and all around the world. And so the local aspects of have to come into play. You can't just ignore where people are from. And just I think if you have to be, I would say necessarily sensitive, you have to be aware of their expectations of how they function in a company.
Yep, absolutely. It can even come down to as simple as how something is phrased. Something
It really does.
a certain way, and the whole topic can just get derailed because somebody assumes it's one way, but really it's just a manner of speaking and whatever.
Yep. The world's not full of Americans, and we got to make sure. I think it's important to understand that, respect that, and meet people where they are.
Absolutely.
What's also management and just enormous struggle is how do you define and measure and coordinate work? Think about your people all over the world, and so you're not all sitting in the same office in the same city. So having a whiteboarding session is not really possible. Having ideas, having you as a traditional manager, you see, all right, they're coming in at 9, they're leaving at 5. I know they're doing work, but when you have people all over the world, then how do you handle that?
Yeah, so a lot of that comes down to the tool sets you used. You mentioned sort of Slack. different ways of actually working together. I use the example of somebody in Italy. So I'm waking up, their workday is ending. So there's different tools that you can use. There's like interactive whiteboards, so I can get in there, I can actually do some whiteboarding, and then somebody can see the progress that's happened on that, and they can go whiteboard on their side after hours. So there's some different things you can kind of do to
Can you get back to kind of more of the challenge of measuring work, especially they're in Italy, so you have frequent holidays. So how do when especially you can have holidays and a different time off schedule than you're used to. So and so there's that schedule, and also I think that plays into coordination. How do you know who's doing what and when? I mean, is there any other challenges that you can think of?
Yeah, so as far as defining the way you work, I think it's really important to actually sit down and agree as a group that we're going to work in this specific way. Is some sort of framework that you could base your work off of. Say we're going to be working in an agile manner, we're going to be working service based. Everything that we do is going to be focused towards the service, or varying different ways that a group could work. But I think the importance is that across the board, everybody agrees that we're going to work in this manner. So a lot of that could be agile, for instance. I'll use that because I've used that in a lot of different places. Having the cards, and then you see those cards getting done, you see them, rotating into blocked, you see things like that. Having some sort of system is kind of key when you're spreading people out across the globe, and you need to be sure what work's getting done, who's doing it.
I think one thing that's also is interesting is there's a popular conception that security is just one team; they all work together. When in reality, it's many teams. You can have a SOC, you can have a red team, a blue team, an IR team. It goes on and on and on, and so that creates more silos, but also people who also need to work together, and so that just creates even more complexity of how do you manage all these teams? They all have to work together.
Yep, they do all have to work together, and they don't all necessarily come from the same background. So just because you're in a cybersecurity group doesn't mean you're necessarily working with extremely technical people. Lawyers get involved when you start doing things like GRC.
Right.
It definitely takes, I think, a person who's able to think outside of just the technical and be able to explain why something might be a risk to somebody on the risk side, or what the technical limitations are to somebody who's maybe an architect. So I think a lot of that comes down to communication skills and being able to break down some of those tasks for people who might not be highly specialized, whether you are or not.
This puts enormous amount of pressure on management, especially your front line and your middle managers, because each one of these teams is going to have a lead or a frontline manager, and then how do you coordinate across? So that creates even a whole another set of challenges.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, a lot of that is just going to be like some of that over communication. So having really frequent one-on-ones with your team, making sure that that information can get back up to your upper management as well. So flowing that up to your directors. Skip levels can be really convenient for that. So we're starting to do quarterly skip levels, some things like that.
Yeah, and that's just going into more of the solutions. I think that more communication, consistent communication is ideal, because it's important as a manager that not only communicating the standards and process but also just building relationships with everyone who works for you, which can be just really difficult because you don't physically see each other. I think this is something that I think is slowly starting to dawn on people, is that there's an excellent possibility that you will never meet the person who works for you in person. And I think that is just kind of weird when you think about it, but it's part of the new paradigm I think we all have to get used to.
Yeah, and then going back to the cultural aspect, if you don't have a company culture set in stone where everybody turns on their camera, not only might you not meet the person, you might never see their face.
That's exactly right. And by the way, I think I think that's from a tips and tricks of someone who had to learn how to be a manager during COVID. I think that cameras and having a policy of everyone has a camera on is incredibly important.
Yep.
Especially when you're having team meetings, you're having engagements, you're having, kind of like live chats. It's critically important to set that expectation as a leader. You got your camera on, you're paying attention.
Yep, absolutely.
It is so easy during a Zoom session or a live stream, hint, hint, to just check out.
Yep, or leave your seat for a second and get a cup of coffee.
Right. Had that happen a few times. I remember there was something we had in Teams where we could actually turn the camera on remotely. Did that a couple times to find out there's no one sitting there. That was interesting. But those are the kind of things that, because just you have to over communicate. I remember when we first started. I mean, the standard was to every other week maybe have a 15-minute one-on-one, and I quickly moved to where I was having a 15-minute one-on-one every couple times a week. Just the idea to check in on people and see how they're doing, and trying to develop a closeness of relationship, because it's not just you just, I'm not sure you can function by just making it a here's your task and let me know when it's done. I'm just not sure that's a sustainable way to get things done.
Yeah, I think the only case in which that might work is if you've worked together for a long time. You might be able to reduce some of the frequency. So if you've had a team for 6, 7, 8 years, you might be
Right.
down to like a one-on-one every other week or once a week. But definitely, if you're coming into a team or building from scratch, frequency would be important. So like you said, a couple times a week at least.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be long, but just the idea that I'm here, I'm talking to you. What do you need? Is there something that you need? Because it's too easy with remote work to feel like you're getting lost.
Yep, absolutely.
And also, I think communication is important. I think just like you were mentioning, that everyone agrees how we're going to track work. It can be agile or Bob's your brother, but everyone, I think, has to have a voice in picking. Here's how we're going to distribute and manage our work. And I think
Yep.
that's another example. I think in a more of a top-down organization, just you're going to make a decision. Like, guess what? We're agile today. But I think when in a remote workforce, everyone, you have to have some buy-in. You have to spend the emotional energy to get buy-in.
Yep, and I'm gonna get a lot of Scrum Masters scowling at me or getting me angry. But you pick what works for you and what works for your team. So
Right.
pieces of Agile might work perfectly, but you might not be a dev shop. So pick
Yeah.
what works.
Exactly. And I think that's why, I mean, Agile has a lot of good parts, but it also has some, I'm going to be polite and say, some unrealistic things as well. And that you take the framework and you adjust it to what makes sense to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're doing things exactly with traditional dev in your dev shop, it's perfect for you. That's what it was built for. But once you start tying in engineering work to it, which isn't necessarily 100% dev related all the time, it can get a little bit sticky.
Yeah.
We started doing some splitting out works into like ops work and dev work to kind of help alleviate some of that. So still tracking it in an agile fashion, but our ops work is tracked separately.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that my experience is we changed how we did the sprints. But also one of the things I tried to do is use like an agile 2-week sprint, but use lots of small tasks. And so I would have myself or whomever I'm working with take a big task and break it down to a bunch of little tasks. And so it was fine to cross sprints, which in most agile shops is the scrum master will shoot you in the head. But it just, you had to make something that was realistic, because just not everything fits there, because as you said, it's purpose made for developers.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So so there any other task or service-based frameworks that you've used or heard of used to allocate and measure work?
I mean, there's all sorts of frameworks out there. There's SRE if you're working towards automation. So if you're doing some SOAR type work and stuff, there's SRE framework. It really builds on some of the agile principles. There's ITIL, of course, waterfall. It really doesn't matter what approach you want to take, but consistency, buy-in from the entire team is super key to make sure that everybody actually gets to work together and agree and actually enjoy their work. If you're trying to shove a framework down somebody's throat, doesn't generally work great. It's okay to have one or two holdouts, but if your entire team is running after you with pitchforks, it's not great.
Right. I think that's where that engagement really matters, because if people don't feel engaged, it's so easy to just do enough to get by.
Yep.
And so just engagement, I think it's important. Pick the right framework. Keep working. I think one of the big lessons I've learned is when something's not working, do something different. Don't double down. Keep adjusting your style. Keep adjusting your approach. And it's important. And I think that's where having a lot of one-on-ones is important to get feedback of what's working, what's not working. Use your reporting if you can. Have a scrum master or some sort of PM to help you. But it's just feedback is a gift, but you got to use it.
Exactly. And if you, like you said, you can tweak it. So if 1 week sprints are too short, you can do work in 2 week sprints. You can say maybe agile. And so for us, we're going to go a different direction. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, you can tweak it and you can learn new ways to do things. And you're not tied into a framework, but it's important to at least start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Start somewhere, but always adjust. Don't spend too much time agonizing. It's better to pick something and learn from it than to spend weeks and weeks trying to pick something and then learn from it. Because all you've done is just wasted more time.
Yeah,
Time is your ultimate commodity. It really is.
absolutely. And then I think some good things to remember too are some of the agile sort of principles. Really, you have 60% of your week is actually going to be dedicated to work.
Right.
You have time that's going to be burnt in meetings, time's burnt spending emails.
That is true. I remember the first time I did that, I allocated 40 weeks to work, and I'd forgotten about lunch, and I had forgotten about meetings, and I'd forgotten about all the one-on-ones, because when I added up my team and my own one-on-ones, I was like, there's no time to do work.
So, yeah. I'm burning 2 days in one-on-ones.
Yeah, I know. So, and those are the things you just don't think about. And I think it's also if you have experience being a more traditional manager, I think it's really important to shift your mindset and using service or task-based work, or I think task-based work to me is the best way to do it in order to understand progress. Because I think the word for what we're, more than just distributed, it's async work. Like, for example, you got someone working for you in Italy, they have an agile task, and so they're working on it, but they're on a completely different timeline than you are.
Yep, absolutely. They could, like you said, alluded to earlier, they could have holidays. I've never wanted to live in Europe, so that's when I realized how many holidays are over there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. That's where you make your case of, I need to have a one-on-one in Italy or something. That's your work trip justification.
Yep, absolutely.
So and let's talk about also engagement tools such as Slack, Teams, and also some of the models. I mean, what's your favorite engagement tool in order, or tool sets to keep your team engaged?
Yeah, I would say as far as communication, keeping people engaged is kind of going to sound corny, but the tools that you have. So if you're a Microsoft shop and you have Teams, and everybody has Teams, might as well use it.
Right.
Or if Slack is an easy way, if you got Microsoft here, you got this here, you got that there, maybe Slack is a good option for you because you can just roll that out everywhere. It's a cloud-based tool, and everybody can get on it super easy without a whole bunch of fuss. But really, the tools that are easy for you to pick up and for a large number of your people to pick up are kind of the best options. So yeah, I think it's really more about the ease and the ability that your entire org can adapt to that. So some of that is going to be talking to the people that you're working with, the people in your team, and asking what they use, kind of figuring out what the average tool set is.
What about something like a wiki or a SharePoint?
Yep. So I've had really great success with things like Confluence. So a shared space where everybody can share the documents. They can all upload them there. So people in one group can, like GRC, for example, they can upload all their policy documents in there. We can upload, the engineering side can upload all of their architecture diagrams. Everything can go all in one spot. So that's really key.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Confluence. Not so much about SharePoint, but Confluence, I think, gives you that kind of flexibility. In being a cloud native tool like that, it gives you just an enormous amount of reach and access.
Yep. I've been forced to use SharePoint.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to wear a cross around my neck to shield me from it.
Yeah.
It's not good. But but I think SharePoint is part of that suite for sure. Agile, if you have access to an agile tool like a Rally or something like that, Jira is another good way of breaking down your tasks, measuring those tasks. Those are all really, really helpful.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Atlassian has a lot of products that interact with each other really well. So if you're going across different tools, that's a really good option. I would say that's a good point as well. Pick something that you can pick as many things up as possible.
Right.
So picking on Atlassian, they've got Jira for task management.
Yeah, Trello.
Yeah, Trello. They've got Confluence for document management. They've got ITSM. So whatever it is you need, find your list of needs. Say I need these 4 or 5 things or whatever, and try to find one place that can fill as many of those as possible.
And that's why I think I like their suite a lot, and also that translate into a lot of different languages. And so there's a lot of global support there.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other things? I mean, so like for example, I've been a big fan of Slack donuts, and for who doesn't know what a Slack donut is, but the idea that it tries to introduce 2 random people in a team or organization or a company to have a 15-minute Slack huddle where you can talk to each other, where you can meet someone you wouldn't normally meet, and I found that it really helps build relationships.
Yep, I've definitely seen some of that in Cribl's community Slack. It'll send you like a random, hey, here's what music have you been listening to? And people are throwing out some music that they're listening to. That happened to me recently. I haven't found any good things like that with Teams. I wish there's probably an app out there somewhere, but yeah, definitely things like Slack's donuts are super good to use if you have access to those.
Yeah, just also Teams is also, I think, find Zoom's really useful for chat, for video. Also also for larger conversations, has been really helpful as well.
Yeah, definitely for a larger audience. I do tend to prefer Zoom a little bit more, just because of the way it presents a large group of people.
Yeah, it's really helpful. I'm trying to think of some other things. Like one of the things that we also did a lot of with my team was we would have code reviews. We would have also essentially office hours, where to have the whole team on a Teams call where for an hour or two. Or we'd also plan to have essentially we'd call it like working groups where we'd hold a teams meeting open for 2 or 3 hours, so people just talk back and forth. The idea that it's like you're all in the same room. And I think that really helped foster communication and collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving people a chance to talk about things outside of work, I think, is extremely important as well. When you're not in the office and you can't kind of hang out by somebody's desk and say, hey, how has this been going in your life or whatever. So giving them that opportunity and that chance is super important as well.
If you're doing a virtual happy hour, also, I can't say this enough to managers, have your happy hour during working hours, not outside of working hours. Don't try to set an expectation with your people that they got to spend their own personal time sitting there on a Teams call with you, because that's just not wise.
Yep. I have a bad history with virtual happy hours. We had one once, then a big incident happened, so that was fun.
No.
Right on Friday night.
Yeah, I started doing this thing where I found a way to send beer to people, and so that was fun. So like at 4 o'clock I'd find a time because of the time zones where most people could be available, and we'd all have a beer together. So just trying to do anything like that, and then we did coffee because some people who didn't want to drink, and so just those are things where, but especially do it during working hours, not after hours.
Yeah, you can do like DoorDash gift certificates to DoorDash a meal to the entire group and do sort of a virtual happy hour with that and stuff like that. So yeah.
On HR to be pretty open to those sort of things. And so I think it's just real important, because if you're uncomfortable with distributed remote management, or you're new to it, just try to look for your options, and just trying to replicate an office environment with distributed teams, I think, is just not a good way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some additional things you can do as well. So really hitting on work anniversaries, I've seen that be kind of a huge success. You can send out virtual gifts through the mail, things like that. So making people feel appreciated, I think, is even more important in a remote distributed.
Oh, absolutely. Birthdays, remote anniversaries, someone got recognized in the company. You've got and that's where one of the things that I really like is we would have essentially blocked out time for team calls. Even if we didn't have a team call, to me, this was protection. Even if we didn't have anything to talk about, it was protection from meetings from other people. So this way you could focus and use this time to get stuff done. And this is where we talk about, since the whole team's on the call, so-and-so had a birthday, so-and-so, had a kid, And just those are super, super important things to do, and be supportive. Because I firmly believe if you're going to be supportive of your team, they'll be supportive of you and the company.
Absolutely. I think my screen just, oh, it's back.
There you go.
Yeah, it just disappeared completely. But yeah, definitely doing stuff like that. Definitely very important.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort. I think it's a lot of emotional energy. And another big thing I think from leaders is it's important that if you're an individual contributor, you have to step back from being an individual contributor and focus on being a leader, because I think that that time, it's just very difficult to try to be both.
Yep, absolutely. Getting to know your team too. But some people are really outgoing and tend to really crave a lot of social interaction, and there are others that really crave the work or enjoy the work from home thing, and they really just love sitting in their cave, and that's how they've been wishing it was the whole time.
Yeah. And that's why I think those check-ins are important. You got to understand who your people are, what they expect, but also I think over communicate, for the people who want to hide. It's just too easy to miss something.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're out to the closing remarks, and so you have any closing wisdom to share, and also tell us about your company.
Yeah. So like you said, we went over the culture a little bit. We went over management. We went over coordination, and I think the key thing we want is just to keep iterating. So keep going through kind of the idea and what you have in your head, and just keep working on it and tweaking it until things kind of fall into place. And if you keep doing that, you'll eventually get into a spot where things start to run smoother, and you start getting a lot less random issues popping up. But it does take some time. It does take a lot of passion, practice and patience to get into. As far as my company, it's Cjapi.io is the website that you can go out to. We're actually launching a small Cribl fundamentals book, which I hope to have the link to shortly. But if you go out to Cribl.io, there will be a little button you can click on. It's just a quick little explanation of sources, destinations, kind of what Cribl does. We have a lot of experience for Cribl here, and other tools as well, Splunk and Tanium, things of that nature.
Great. I really appreciate your time. I just hope this can help managers who are trying to manage their team and trying to handle a brave new world. So I hope this will prove some value. James, really thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your wisdom.
Yeah, nice meeting with you again.
All right, take care. So everyone, just as a wrap up, join our Cribl Slack community at cribl.io/community. It's 5,000 strong. We're all there. Love to communicate. Please let us know how you're doing. If you have questions, James is in the Cribl community as well, very active, and we're here to help you get work done. Really appreciate it. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.